to get started. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. This is what we used to do as those the college meetings we would have after the budget hearings. I just want to remind you about that. About 5 years ago, we started this budget hearing process with the deans and others from the colleges would come in, spend some time talking about their accomplishments, make a request for above base resources and that sort of thing. Then we'd go back to every college. Over time, I think the attendance has dropped, so we thought it'd be more efficient just to have 2 of these town hall meetings. This is not the State of the University address. It's going to be high-level stuff that will deal with budget, issues related to faculty, diversity, student support, facilities, and then at the end we'll have a discussion about the Centennial Celebration. The State of the Union address will be sometime in November. It's going to be PowerPoint free. Some in this office, that probably means it's content free, but I still hope to see you then. So anyway, thank you for being here today. We'll be doing this again in the afternoon. The real substantive part of this will be presented by the provost, by Dr. Sumner, our VPR Heppert, Byron Kennedy, and especially Noel Sloan, who's a vice president for finance and administration. So if we can just go to the first slide. This is something we sent out earlier this week. And so we had a very slight increase in enrollment this year. And you might wonder, I heard from a lot of alumni, what about 40,000? Well, that's the goal that was established for 2020. And I was questioned quite a bit about that in the press. Where'd that goal come from? What was the logic of it? And so on and so forth. And I just wanted to say it wasn't my idea. But this is the truth. Texas Tech is in the top 20 in the U.S. and universities in our Moody's bond rating. That gives us a tremendous advantage when we engage in construction and we have to issue bonds. It speaks to the strength of the university. And just this past year, Moody's gave an unfavorable outlook to higher ed because so many schools, especially in the Northeast and the Midwest, are facing enrollment challenges. So that's one reason we do pay attention to enrollment. Also, in this state, we have not gone to an outcomes-based funding mechanism. Everything is just based on how many student credit hours you teach. We are not keeping up with the state average in that regard, but we're still doing fairly well in terms of state funding. But you see tremendous growth in institutions like UT Arlington, North Texas, A&M, and others. So that's another thing we have to balance. It really isn't the concern of faculty shouldn't have to, that's not their problem. That's for us to manage. But we do have to balance the issues of growth as it relates to our finances while maintaining quality and such. The most important thing on this slide relates to retention. Last year, we had nearly 6,200 freshmen, 6,175 or something like that. And to have retained the percent of that class as we did is very significant. It actually was 68.8, but I rounded off. So, and it's also still in flux. But that speaks to the great work of so many, the advising, the Office of Student Success and Retention has done a tremendous job, but to the faculty and to the staff. We're starting to see improvement in our graduation rates. We went up 2% in our 5-year rate. We've gone up about a little over 3% in our 4-year rate in the last 3 to 4 years. We're finally making some progress in our 6-year rate. But those are the things that really matter in terms of the success of students and the debt they leave with. So I think those are the important issues. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Noel, and then we'll get started.
Thank you. As this is a recap of the operating budget, and in place of our college budget hearing forums that we had done in the past, we really wanted to talk about finances. So talking about the state funding first, this was a very positive year for higher education through the state. It is probably one of the best for higher education in the time that I've served in this role, and certainly in our recent history. For Texas Tech University, this was also true in that we received support for our School of Veterinary Medicine. We also had about a 5.8% increase in our general revenue, and that was because the state supported across the board enrollment growth. And also this included an increase in our core research funding, which is directly attributable to our increase in research expenditures, which Dr. Heppard will speak to. In addition to the increase in state funding, we also have an increase in our institutional funding. As you know, we go to the board for our tuition and fee plan every 2 years, and so there was also built into their prior approval an increase in our tuition rate of 2.4% to align with inflationary increases, as well as semester credit hour growth. Probably one of the best areas we've done is the collaboration across the institution in our summer SCH growth. We have done specific scholarship investments, housing partnered for 50% off their housing rates to keep more students on campus, and we saw about a 5.3% increase in our SCH this summer over last summer. And that's always important as we talk about our state funding as well, because this next summer, summer of 2020, will begin our next counting period for state funding as well. As a result of the college budget hearings, we always have a large number of asks. We've extended it beyond just the colleges, but all of our academic and administrative departments. And through that, we've really invested all the new funding of state and institutional back in. We have about $10 million in continued funding, $18 million in new funding, and really focus those investments in our faculty, staff, and students. A lot of these things have already gone out in memos to the campus community on how we invest in our faculty and staff with our merit, faculty merit pools, 2% merit pool for all, increase in our retirement plans, increase in our $11 per hour minimum wage for our full-time employees. Also in student scholarships, we have increased about $2 million in merit scholarships and a $2 million in need-based scholarships. So we continue to support both merit and need, as well as investments in colleges, departments, with those asks that occurred during the budget hearings. And one of those is institutional advancement. That is new this past year, having a VP for institutional advancement at the institution level, and Byron will share some more on that focus in his report. And we continue to invest $4 million a year in our Raider rooms. These are the presidential classrooms and class labs, and have had a lot of great feedback as far as the utilization. So when we talk about our higher education funds that help us with our facilities, that's related to how well we use our space. And we are seeing a great increase in how we are using those rooms that we have renovated. And we continue to look at alternative revenue sources to balance our budget and how we're doing our land development. So as you'll see on the next slide, that's important because even though it's probably too small to read any of this, Texas Tech University has reached a milestone in this first $1 billion operating budget for this year. But looking at history, this is only a 3.5% increase over last year. Last year was a 3.7% increase over the prior year, so it's consistent with our growth, but yet we have reached a $1 billion enterprise. But what's interesting about this chart, whether you can read the numbers or not, is the bar graph. So we went back 30 years ago, 1990, that black shading part of the graph in the beginning is 56% of our operating budget came from the state, and only 13% from institutional tuition and fee revenue. You go back 20 years, and fiscal year 2020, 47% of our budget came from state, and 20% from institutional funds. But if you look at the last 10 years, we've pretty much flatlined, and now we have about 30% of our operating budget coming from state funding and 37% coming from institutional funds. When you look at that state funding, 30% of our budget coming from state, about 16% is coming from our general revenue. And so it's important that we keep those strong semester credit hour growth, weighted semester credit hour growth, because that's our formula funding, is about making up 16%. The other funding from the state is coming from our higher education funds, our NRUF funds, our state tuition to make up that 30%. So as we talk about the change in our financial model, and the more of it coming from our tuition and fees, it's also become important how we support scholarships to really continue access and affordability. So currently about 60% of our undergrad and graduate students receive some type of grant or scholarship. But if you look over the past even just year, there's been an increase of $10 million in all types of financial aid that's been given out to students, whether that's grants, scholarships, loans. But in the last decade, the last 10 years, if you just look at presidential merit scholarships, we've increased 300% the amount that are being distributed merit scholarships, impacting an additional 9,000 students. So it's important as we look at the market that we continue to support scholarships and making sure that those scholarships are also continuing through the student's career here at Texas Tech. I'll turn it over to the provost to talk about faculty.
Thank you, Noelle. I want to spend just a few minutes telling you a little bit about the numbers and composition of our faculty, mostly, and a couple of things about salary, which usually piques everyone's interest. But our faculty composition, we are just under about 1,800 full-time faculty. These numbers do not include GPTIs and TAs. So this is full and part-time faculty. Of that 1,788 or whatever that number is, the full-time is about 1,500. And of that, about 1,100 is tenure track. If you look at the change over time from 2013, that's about a 16% increase across those years in faculty headcount. That corresponds to about a 15% increase in student headcount over that same time frame. If you look at the tenure track piece of that, it actually ranges from about 1,070 to 1,100 over that time span, so we haven't changed those counts appreciably. If you go back a year, probably to 2012, you would find that we had a much larger increase about that time in our tenure track lines. But basically over the last 5 or 6 years, we've been adding in the non-tenured ranks, and that's probably about 400 full-time non-tenured faculty members, and out of the 600 or so that are shown up there, the rest of those would be part-time. So we are adding people in the non-tenured ranks primarily, and I think that's a reflection of choices in colleges in an effort to meet the teaching requirements that we have. Chris? This slide breaks that down into some of the numbers that I was already talking about, which is the amount of tenure track and non-tenured faculty over time. And you can see from the black bars that basically that's where the increase has been. The other ones, if you add them up, as I said, are somewhere around 1,100 over that period of time. The next slide is an effort to illustrate to you that because, as I said a while ago, we've kind of matched faculty count and student count, as you might expect, we have also been able to keep up, I would say, in terms of our teaching load. So the teaching load has not increased. In fact, if you look at the SCH taught per full-time equivalent faculty, that actually has gone down slightly. I guess you could argue that across that span, that's fairly stable numbers anyway, but at least it's not going up, reflecting a higher load on the faculty in that regard. The next slide does some salary comparisons. The red bars reflect the emerging research universities in the state of Texas. The kind of gold-colored bars are the Big 12 schools. We'll start with professors, and you can see that we're at about 96% of the Big 12 average, a little bit lower than that on the emergings. These data are from fall or FY17. So it's that far back. Obviously, we've had a series of merit adjustments. We've had equity adjustments, at least 2, I think, in that time frame, one last year and then one again this fall. Hopefully, we've certainly kept pace, and presumably we might have moved that number up a little bit. If you move to the next slide, Chris, which is associate professors, we actually fare better on associate professors probably than any other group as far as the salary comparison relative to our peers in the Big 12 and in the emerging research universities. Not the emergings, but we do in the Big 12 at least. And then finally, and a little bit surprising, I think, to many of us, is that we are probably a little lower than I expected us to be on our assistant professors. We generally tend to think that we keep up on starting salaries, which I would argue, at least in most of the fields I'm familiar with, I think we do, but we are lagging behind, at least in these data, from 2 years ago, FY17. So with that, I will turn it over to Carol, who will talk a little bit about some of our diversity profiles.
Good morning. We share the statistics and the numbers, but what I'd like to provide with you along with the numbers are some of the things that we've been doing to build on what has already begun. The increase in the number of individuals by staff, we're looking at demographics. You'll see male to female. Our ratio of male to female for staff is unlike that of students. You'll see that in the following slide. You'll also see the ratio of those staff by ethnicity. Exempt and non-exempt staff are together. The largest portion of the population being white. The growing population is Hispanic. That is reflected similarly in our student demographics and with other races and ethnicities. If you are familiar, Hispanic is an ethnicity, so it can be any number of individuals that are amongst various races. If you'll go to the next slide, you'll see our faculty by gender, again, and by ethnicity. This is the flip. You'll start seeing more male faculty members. The same will be with students, more male. Again, as you're looking at our race and ethnicity breakdown, a significant portion of our racial and ethnic groups are white. What I want to share is the work that's being done to increase these numbers has continued to trend over time. So we're working very purposefully, excuse me, with our human resources office, with our colleges, with other departments to look at how are we messaging the institution, how are we framing the experience of coming to tech and participating and retaining our faculty, staff, and students who are members of diverse communities. Particularly for faculty, we are working and have implemented a faculty committee hiring training that will help not just about diversity, but how are we looking at the trajectory of research and others that are different or innovative or outside of what we may have looked at before. And how are we looking at those as trends, not just for hiring faculty, but then will lend themselves into the tenure and promotion process. So we're trying to make sure that those that are serving on search committees have a different opportunity to engage with each other about practices we can do to provide a supportive environment. Next slide, you'll see our enrollment for our undergraduate students. One of the things that we've been working on is changing language, because language does matter. You'll see Pacific Islander, American Indian, unknown, African American, multiple, non-resident. I was asked specifically to change the language from non-resident alien to non-resident international. I believe that's where we have come to. So we're going to start internally changing some of the language so that individuals are not placed in a position where they feel as though they are outsiders, when that has never been the intention of the institution. Again, you'll see our Hispanic population has continued to grow over time, 29.8 and 29.8, which is what is a part of that requirement to become an Hispanic serving institution. If you'll go to the next slide, you'll see our graduate student enrollment. Again, you'll see the traditional races and ethnicities, non-resident, not using alien, but using international as a conduit. We do have mechanisms that we're working with our graduate and undergraduate enrollment teams to look at how are we positioning the institution to be a place where students who don't see West Texas as a place where they belong can find it to be exactly the place where they can come and be successful. Those are parts of the work that you have a role in helping us do, which is shape the message to the experience so that those numbers will continue to grow over time. I'll turn this over now to Dr. Hepburn.
Well, it was an exciting year for research at Texas Tech. And again, as I did in a recent column, I want to congratulate the entire community on really doing a world-beating job of enhancing our research and scholarly activity. At the risk of leaving out a lot of great accomplishments, I just want to draw your attention to a few things. We were redesignated as a Carnegie Very High research classification this year. That's an incredibly important metric for the university. We had faculty who won 3 different awards from NEH this year, including some very prestigious awards. The College of Education came in with over $9 million worth of support for the U.S. Prep program, teacher education. That's a great program. As Carol mentioned, we have been designated in many cases as a Hispanic serving institution, and that's really opened up a lot of activity and opportunity and excitement in grant activity. 2 Texas Tech researchers, Harvinder Gill and Steve Presley, were funded to work on developing a universal vaccine for flu. And as you know, flu is a worldwide problem. This is an incredible example of the difficult and important research we're doing at Texas Tech. And in terms of construction, ESB2 has been completed. The ribbon cutting ceremony is happening very shortly. And we've already begun talking with department chairs and with units about what will go into the new academic science building. So infrastructure is an issue that we're very much focused on. There is some really good news in terms of overall expenditure metrics this year. We're up in terms of our overall expenditures and also up in terms of the federal research expenditures. Those numbers are important for us for a couple of reasons. They feed into many of the institutional rankings and the reputational metrics that are really important to grow the university overall. But also, one of the things I keep reminding people is some of the resources that come in as a result of that allow us, out of the Office of Research, to really support other kinds of research activities across the entire spectrum at the university. Good news for the future, too, here. As you'll see in 2019, from the summary, new research federal research grants are up substantially over the past, and that's a trend in order to grow Texas Tech's overall research reputation and scholarly reputation. We really need to continue. The sobering news on this slide is that while you'll see the black line represents awards, federal awards, and they went up in 2019, they've been trending up the last few years. You'll notice that the number of federal grants we submit has been flat for a long time. And in order to move the needle further, to really expand our research activities, not just in areas where we can get federal funding, but across the board, we need to really expand the number of proposals that we put out every year. So here are some of the research emphases we're going to be focusing on this particular year. We're going to continue to focus and work with the deans on plans for excellence in hiring, and I can't emphasize to you across the board as I talk to junior faculty how good a job we're doing in bringing really exciting and talented people to the campus. We need to increase our success in grant writing. We plan to sustain support for the arts, humanities, and social sciences. I was privileged to fund a couple of different conferences out of my help support, not totally fund, but support a couple of different conferences out of my office this last year, and we've already planned to do 1 or 2 more this coming year, particularly in the arts and humanities. We want to enhance everybody's opportunity and lower the barrier to submitting grant proposals. We're still identifying scholarly themes for investment, so I'm inviting the community to provide white papers to us about areas where they think growth can occur. We're planning for and as part of the process of looking at the new academic sciences building, we know we have to continue planning for long-term investment in improving research infrastructure. That's key across the board to building our programs. And finally, we're going to be really concentrating this year on raising the profile of innovation and entrepreneurship here at the university and the way we can reach out and help the economics of the region as a result. I'm going to turn it over to Byron now for some discussions about advancement.
Thank you, Joe, and good morning to the group. We'll make these remarks brief. They could be long, but that wouldn't be fun for any of us. We've had a great year, and we continue to have a great year. As Noel mentioned earlier, this is really the first year that the advancement function has lived on the TTU campus. So as we build that up, as we look to better partner with colleges, as we look to support the President's office, and truly the mission and the priorities of TTU specifically, we continue to grow. And growth is really what I would say is the point of everything I would say today. Since 2011, you see a growth in the Texas Tech advancement, the Texas Tech endowment. The funds that are set aside in the long-term fund just for Texas Tech have grown explosively. Our greatest challenge at this point is to build a team and to build a machine that recognizes this, to understand who we've become, the resources that we have, and the way to continue to capitalize on it. As you see most recently, these are last year's numbers, but $775 million set back permanently to be used for any number of uses across the TTU campus. If that's looking at what we have in the bank, this is looking at what's coming in. What you'll see here are big numbers that we're definitely proud of. Numbers that speak well, I think, of our alumni, not our advancement shop, by the way. Our job is to stay organized and to find passions in philanthropy and match those with TTU. But what you'll also see is from 2015 to even in 2018, you'll see a 50% swing in the amount of money that we raise in a year, anywhere from 86 million to almost 130. What we're talking about with my team as we build culture, as we talk about the organization that we want to be, is yes, we will always chase that top number. In any one year, that top number is going to be wildly affected by one or two large gifts. Ultimately, we don't control timing, and many times we don't control amounts of donors, but we will always chase those big gifts. But the health of our team, the health of Texas Tech, will be not in the 130 years, but it will be in the years where we don't go back to 86. So we're going to draw a line around $100 million and try to make that our marching orders. The goals you'll see, particularly to the deans as we publish our goals college to college, those are aspirational. Those are the things that if everything hit in a year, that's what our year would look like. We know we don't always line it out that clearly, but truly our health will be in continuing to raise the floor as we chase the ceiling. To that end, goals that we have for this year, we just talked through the first one. The second one is we're still building, we're still growing, we're still trying to staff our major gift function specifically. After that, we'll move into some of the auxiliary services. We'll be good at annual fund. We'll be better on the telephone. We will grow the base of support as we continue, again, to chase those one or two major gifts in each year. Another thing that we want to partner with fund managers across the campus is utilizing the funds that we have well. If you look at that growth, part of it is catching up with what we have and making sure we're putting those things into the stream of commerce, getting them done. We have funds that range from pure scholarships to programmatic support to discretionary funds for the deans, and that we are partnering with you to tell you the funds and the resources you have available and helping us work together to get those used. In areas where we have criteria that are too tight, let us know. We can work with donors to loosen that up to the objectives of the college. But using the money that we have well as we chase and go out and find new money is going to be the drumbeat of 2020 for us. To that end, I'll turn it back over to Noel to talk about, I think, facilities projects.
Yeah, it kind of continues on that same theme. We just want to become more focused, partnering with institutional advancement and really looking at the strategic priorities of the campus, that we are focusing where we're putting our efforts as far as facilities, renovations, and things like that. If you look at what we currently have in process to completion, we have 15 different projects ranging from academic, student administrative to athletic facilities. And so that's a lot already going on, but we want to be more focused as we talked from here to 2025 into the Centennial Celebration. Where are we going to focus our efforts in the next? So the next slide kind of talks about What's on the horizon? There's been, as Dr. Heppert mentioned, a lot of discussion at the department chair level to deans in really looking at what does the academic science building, what does that mean? Where are the 3 to 4, maybe 5 key areas that need the most renovation that we need to focus on in designing this next large facility to address both student and faculty and research needs? As well as when we're looking at that, it becomes a much larger scale plan is when we bring on academic science building, what that means for backfill for the existing science buildings, and moving Holden Hall into part of the engineering key facilities. There's also School of Music, Architecture, Mass Writer. There's student needs in our library, our rec center, maybe another additional residence hall. So all of these things are in play as we try to plan out the next 5 years. In addition to facilities, I know the president, I had mentioned it a little bit before, wants to talk about how we're looking at land development as well.
Chris, could you go back to that first slide? I'm going to elaborate a bit about what's going on yeah, right, no, there. So this month, we'll have a groundbreaking for ESB2. It's a fabulous facility. The state provided about $70 million in tuition revenue bonds, and we supplemented that with another $12 million. We're going to also have I think we will have a groundbreaking for phase 1 of the Majan Theater as well, and then we've already funded, we've given the permission to proceed with phase 2. There's something going on in the state that I want to alert you to. Like in the case of the Majan, we received $20 million in donations. The university committed $10 million, and then we received what was called a Texas Research Incentive Program Award of 10. Now, what's happened in the state, the TRIP program started many years ago, where if you have a gift of $2 million or more, you get a 1-to-1 match from the state. And what's happened, Tech has gotten more of that money than anybody else, but other institutions have raised a lot of money for facilities through the TRIP program. This past session, the state only funded $35 million. And there was more than $80 million in the queue, and it continues to grow. The $10 million TRIP match we have for the Majan, we may not see 4 or 5 years. So this has affected some of our plans for not only fundraising, but also construction. Tomorrow, we're going to go up to Amarillo and have the groundbreaking for the teaching facility for the School of Veterinary Medicine. We raised $90 million for that. It's going to be, that's a very big deal. You know, we're renovating Weeks Hall. It's been empty for about 25 years. It will have a variety of uses. And then the greenhouse relates to a facility for the National Academy of Science member we hired. We haven't decided exactly what we're going to do where the Coliseum and the auditorium was. That's a really nice screen space over there. I kind of like it the way it is, but there is discussions of possibly putting one more dorm on this campus, and that would be one place we might put it. Maybe a dorm that was shared between the general student population and athletics. Athletics can raise money for things like that. It's very difficult to raise money for dorms. We didn't raise any money for the honors dorm that we dedicated last year. So if you go to the next slide, Chris, I want to say a bit about that academic sciences building. We're not going to fundraise for that. I mean, we will, but we're not going to wait until we start that facility. If you look at the what we have in the chemistry building, the science building, and biology, the labs are really substandard. And it can't be fixed through that $4 million investment that Noel alluded to earlier. So we're going to fund that through university sources. And we'll probably take that to the board this year and get permission. It's going to be in addition to the back. It's going to be behind chemistry and physics. There may be an addition to the front of chemistry. There's going to be a committee put in place eventually to get input from faculty and departments that would use it. Right now, Noel and others are going around visiting with chairs to get input as to what they really want. Once that report's put together, we'll have a broader committee that will decide how we might design that space. But I want to alert you to other things that are going on with regard to our land use. We have that property west of the credit union. That's some of the most valuable property in Lubbock. We're in a discussion right now about establishing a public-private partnership to put a hotel there. It would be premature to say it's absolutely going to happen. We've discussed it with the board on numerous occasions. There's general support for it. We have a lot of work to do a market analysis, to look at the viability of it. We have partners that are very interested in working with us to do that. That would be one way of creating a revenue stream other than tuition. As you know, they're also going to be starting on a Veterans Administration facility across from HSC. They were on 4th Street. We sold that property to the Health Sciences Center, but we retained a strip of land along Indiana, and we'll be looking at developing that with retail and commercial activity that would complement what goes on at the Veterans Administration facility, but also would create another possibility for revenue to the university. There's some other possibilities that relate at the corner of 4th and Quaker. And an important priority going forward will be to start to see more activity in the Innovation Hub and Research Park. That's this, there's that one building over there west of HSC. Kimberly Graham is doing a fabulous job heading up the Innovation Hub and Research Park. And we have received permission to establish a 501c3 under which it would operate. That would make construction, we could proceed more rapidly with construction and at a rate that would be more attractive to tenants. We've already received permission from the IRS for approval of that 501c3. So you're going to see more activity over there in the future as well. But I just want you to know that we're blessed to have land, and we're looking at ways to use it to generate revenue that would relieve our dependence so much on tuition dollars.
Like, you can cover it if it's the most exciting one. We continue to look at the growth of our campus, not only in our students, but in our faculty and staff, and really looking at the safety of our core campus. There's a lot of topics that can come up in relation to this, but a couple of years ago, you're all familiar that we closed down 15th Street in front of Plant Soil Science during the day hours. This past summer, we closed down 15th Street between University coming onto campus. That has now become a surface parking lot. And next summer, what you'll see is the rest of 15th Street closed as we redo the administration parking lot between the administration building and the student union. So the goal in this is to really remove some of the vehicular traffic. So the buses will have an outer loop for those that are coming from off campus. They will connect hopefully at that new parking lot in University and 15th Street, walk up to where the Honors College is, connect with a smaller number of buses doing an inner loop then, and no buses will be running in between the administration building and the student union. There's a lot of traffic there, pedestrian traffic, that for the safety of the students, we want to move that outwards. But also, this is a very great opportunity and very exciting to really create a pedestrian walkway that will connect from Memorial Circle all the way through to the student union. And I know that there's been comments that the blue there is not a water feature or a stream running through the parking lot. It was more to mimic what we have in the tiles that are going up to Memorial Circle. So we are not doing a fishing stream or anything else, but we are excited about what this beautification project will bring to the campus and the core of campus as well. And that I'll turn it over to Grace for the Centennial Celebration.
So I have only one number to throw at you, 100. In 2023, we'll be celebrating Texas Tech's 100th birthday. The president has assembled a committee chaired by Dr. Lisa Wong and myself, and we're at the very early stages of planning and with projects already underway. And we'll start ramping that up at the beginning of next year. Although there will be some exciting celebrations throughout the year, more importantly, this will be an opportunity to tell Texas Tech's story, where we've been, where we are, and where we want to be. Texas Tech is steeped in traditions, and we will celebrate those traditions in telling our story, just as we honor and celebrate those who laid a path to what our great institution is today. Our major focus will nevertheless be on what our next 100 years will bring. The Centennial is a perfect opportunity to reaffirm and strengthen our brand, refocus on our students, faculty, staff, alums, to define what Texas Tech will achieve in the next century, and to confront our challenges. We assure you that we will celebrate all our constituents aside from those I've mentioned, including our colleges, our regional sites, our off-campuses, such as Costa Rica, and of course the new vet school. We will also involve the Lubbock community in our celebration. This will be an exciting time for Texas Tech University, and we hope that all of you will participate in this. Thank you.
With that, we'll take questions. But Grace, I might mention, they've done a lot more than Grace conveyed. They've already begun to work on a publication. It's called 100 Years, 100 Voices. They've picked certain people, certain events. I think it would surprise you as to who they're going to feature there. It tells the good and the not so good of what's happened here. But I think it's going to be a really exciting project. You're going to have the opportunity to go online and nominate other people who can be part of those voices that you want to celebrate and bring attention to. It's going to begin in December of 2022 at the Carol of Lights. That will launch it. It will run that whole year. There's going to be a sequence of a series of events, and then it's going to conclude with the Carol of Lights in 2023. And we already have two really prominent people that want to sing at those two events. So I think it's going to be a really neat occasion. There's going to be a massive three-dimensional show on the administration building from Memorial Circle. Grace and Elisa went to a workshop where they saw what other schools were doing. We're not going to spend as much as they did, but it's still going to be nice. And with that, we just want to hear any questions you have about anything. Yes, Ram?
President Sloan, first let me thank you for this town hall. Last year we did once, we did twice, morning and afternoon, that's why. One of the things is, I represent the Senate and the AUP. The concern has been always how much the salary squeeze has been at the professor level, which the provost addressed. You have done it twice in recent past. Do you think that initiative will continue, because there's a lot of gap there, and that's what I want to plead on behalf of Senate as well as AUP consider at least at the senior level faculty.
So Noel didn't explicitly mention that in that first slide, but as we did last year, this year we set aside $500,000 for equity adjustments. That we'll do again in January.
We rolled it out September 1st.
December 1st. So that's not a significant amount when you look at the budget of all the salaries. But also if you looked at the data, if you recall what Mike showed, we're most competitive at the full rank. It's where we really see the gap is at the lower rank. But then I'm sure many people are sitting in this room, and when they see those average salaries, they go, where are they getting those numbers? Because there's a lot of disparity across discipline and colleges. So we're sensitive to that. We don't want to lose good people. And beyond just that equity pool of $500,000, deans regularly go to the provost with requests to address flight issues, and we do that a lot. So that's something we're going to do. Last year, we did not advertise that as a mid-career adjustment. It was for anybody, and that's the way it will be again this year. Yes, Aaron? No, the bulk of it, it's going to be behind it. There's that green space there. But, I mean, first of all, this is very premature, but we have just a very, very rough sketch where you have that area in chemistry when it goes between those two buildings, that would be built out. But it's, again, that's very premature. So Noel and Sean and others have visited, I think, with several of the department chairs to get their input, asking them, what do you need? What will you be doing in the future? They'll give me a report, and then we'll assemble a committee of faculty to get into the real details of how we'll design it. But we're looking at something probably in the order of 80 to 90 million to do it. We need that desperately. Any questions about football? Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. I was visiting with a donor about other issues, and they've done a lot for this campus, both in infrastructure and scholarships. But when I showed this to them, they said, I'll fund it right now. But we didn't want, it's not a lot of money to do that, and I didn't want to take advantage of that. Bigger requests in mind. And so I think that is one of the ugliest parts of our campus. It's also, I think Dr. Heppert had to pull a student out from under a bus last year on the Lime scooter. Now, I thought somebody was surely going to ask something about the scooter issue. I see heads going up and down. The students love it. And I think that's important. That's important. And yesterday, as I was going across campus, going down a road, they were coming directly in that lane of traffic. I just had to stop and go to the side. That's an issue. And I received an email from a mother 2 days ago. Her daughter was hit and hurt in an accident. These are serious matters. Now, the reason we picked we picked Lime was because when we issued an RFP to select a provider, they address safety more than anybody else. And I think aspects of that program are not fully implemented, but are the helmets being distributed?
Yes, so a safety fair was last Thursday.
Yeah, Noel, you want to come here and talk about that? That they offered me a helmet yesterday, but I didn't want it. I didn't want to mess up my hair.
Yes, Lime has been a good partner. They held a safety fair last Thursday. Everybody who went received a helmet provided by Lime, certainly trying to encourage safety. Before the students can use a Lime scooter, there's an app that they have to at least click through the safety provisions first before they can unlock and use a scooter. And they've also been great partners whenever we report an incident or something that has happened, parked in the wrong space, riding in the wrong places. They have the ability to track that on their app. And so if there is, they have a graduating scale, and then if there's a number of violations that have been reported to them, that student is then locked out of using the app. So it's just also on all of us to help kind of report those things so that Lime can put those measures in place as well from their side.
We're coming to the end, but Danny?
Yes, these are when he said that not all of it's been fully implemented, our University Transportation Services is in communication with them, both on the speed as well as required maintenance and making sure that they are removing and providing vehicles that are maintained so that they're not breaking down or, other impairments like that. So those are things that we are continuing to work with Lime on.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for being here. Hope the semester's off to a great start and have a great year.